Does God condone slavery in the Bible? Did he order genocide? What about the oft repeated claim that he's misogynistic? Do the Gospels contradict each other? Look, most congregations have folks who have wondered about these questions, even if they haven't raised them with their pastor. I'm Ken Coughlan, a Christian apologist and a religion teacher at St. Paul's Lutheran School in Glen Burnie, Maryland. And back in 2019, I set out to lead a Bible study about these questions in my local church. And I wound up writing the materials myself. Now, those materials eventually turned into the book that I'm talking to you about today, Cracking Open the Hard Parts of the Bible. Cracking Open the Hard Parts of the Bible is a book that can be effective just for individual reading, but it's also designed to be used by churches as a 6-week Bible study. And it's not just about giving answers to these questions. I mean, there are plenty of books that do that. But even if we could memorize everything that's said in all those books, eventually we're going to come across someone who raises some objection to the Bible that we haven't heard before. If all we have in our arsenal is a collection of answers to particular questions, then we don't have the tools to respond when we come across something new. So what makes this book different is that in addition to giving answers to some of the most common objections, it also provides 6 interpretive principles that can help you find answers on your own. It gives you a strategy to tackle future conversations yourself. Chapter 1 is called, Is God Immoral? This chapter walks through a few different passages that skeptics often claim show God did something evil, like supposedly commanding child sacrifice or punishing David's son for David's sin, or taking joy in young children being dashed against the rocks. The chapter uses these passages to illustrate the first 5 interpretive principles that will be used throughout the rest of the book. Principles that show how to break down a skeptic's objection and discover God's truth instead of the misrepresentation of it that non-believers often spread. So chapter 2 answers one of the most emotionally charged questions that is raised about the Bible. Did God condone slavery? So many people, even Christians, think the Bible endorses practices like we saw in the American South before the Civil War. But we just kind of ignore those parts or pretend they're not really there. And that's not a good enough answer. Did God order genocide? That's what chapter 3 is all about. The Jews were God's chosen people, but does that mean that he didn't care about any other nations or races? And in fact, did he endorse the mass genocide of people solely based on their nationality? A lot of people also think God is misogynistic. Priests or pastors need to be male. All the apostles were male. And supposedly there are plenty of Old Testament laws in particular that egregiously fail to treat women as being equal in value to men. So chapter 4 shows where this thinking goes wrong. Chapters 5 and 6, they shift the focus a little bit. Instead of answering big moral questions like the previous chapters, the last 2 parts of the book respond to the claim that the Bible is supposedly full of contradictions. And while doing that, these chapters also introduce the 6th interpretive principle. 2 areas in particular are common targets for skeptics. The stories in Matthew and Luke about Christ's birth, and the allegedly irreconcilable versions told by all 4 gospel authors about Jesus' death and resurrection. Why do Matthew and Luke give different genealogies? Did Luke invent a census that never happened? What about the slaughter of the innocents? Why isn't it mentioned in any historical source outside of Matthew? How many angels were at Jesus' tomb? Aren't the accounts of what happened to the tomb just hopelessly contradictory? Each chapter in the book is also designed to get the reader thinking. It will introduce a topic, then pause by giving some discussion questions for the reader or the group to reflect upon. And then after helping folks kind of think through these questions themselves, it wraps up the topic and moves on to the next, following that same pattern, right? Introduction, discussion, then wrap up. The point isn't just to give you answers to memorize, but to train you with principles that you can apply to future conversations, regardless of whatever the particular difficulty is that comes up. So I would love for you to give it a read, use it in a study, and let me know how it works out. Cracking Open the Hard Parts of the Bible is available on Amazon. You can find a direct link for it at kencoughlin.org. And there's also a way on that website for you to contact me if you have any questions. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time, and God bless.